Welcome into the Just Baseball Show. It is Friday, January 10th. You got Arm Lane and I am Peter Apple. And in this episode, Arm, you ready to harmonize?
I'm gonna
You go
try.
you go low, I'll go high. All right? Three,
Okay.
2, 1. Mailbag.
Mailbag.
Not bad. Not bad. Welcome to the mailbag edition of this Just Baseball Show on this Friday. We asked for you to ask all of your questions on our Instagram and on our Twitter. We dropped the graphic like we do every Thursday morning for the Friday show. So if you miss this mailbag, we'll have plenty in the future. But just always remember to make sure to follow our Instagram and our Twitter to ask all these questions. Arm, we got 8 great ones. We also have to talk about Justin Verlander signing with the San Francisco Giants. But luckily, in the mailbag, we have a question talking about the Giants. So we'll cover the Verlander signing over there. One thing that I do want to talk about quick, our incredible merch. I know I mentioned on the
Yeah.
last episode, but Brandon Anderson, our fantastic graphic designer, came out with a new line of merch, which you can find in our merch store. You can search Just Baseball merch on Google, or you can find the link in the episode description. We got hoodies that rock. 2001 World Series logos combined with the Just Baseball logo. It's absolutely fantastic. I already ordered one. Have you gotten yours yet?
I haven't gotten it yet. I already just did a big order of some other stuff to replenish the closet. So I want to take it slow before I hit the store again pretty hard. But no, it's been awesome seeing the ideas that they've put together there. And we've got like a merch group chat now where guys are like slinging ideas left and right. My girlfriend Ellie, who's an artist, is like involved in it now too. So it's cool to see just all the different creative ideas coming out, and we're just trial and error. So let us know. You'll Even if you're not buying something immediately, just give us some feedback on like what you like, what you don't like, and help us keep putting out some cooler stuff for you.
Absolutely. And if you aren't in the market for any sweatshirts, no problem at all. Leave some of that feedback in the comment section of this YouTube video. And while you're at it, hit that like button and subscribe for more baseball videos. And of course, be sure to rate and review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts 5 stars. Arm, without further ado, I say we get straight into the mailbag. What say you?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. Question number one. Which prospect out of the top 100 right now can reach the top 25 prospects in all of Major League Baseball, excluding the upcoming draft guys? Asked by Naoki, baseball nerd on Instagram. He's always coming through with
I
some
love them.
incredible questions, especially on the prospect side. Now, this question is layered, right? No upcoming
Yeah.
draft guys. Also, give us an update. When's the next top 100 coming? And then the floor
Yeah.
is yours for the answer.
Yeah, so I'm working on the team updates right now, which actually helps me update the overall top 100, because really it's like checking in on every single farm system, right? And like there's certain players. One of the answers I'm actually going to give here is a guy that I checked back in on when we updated the Brewer system, and is a guy that just now looking at how he finished the last couple months, looking at the data, looking at the video, I'm like, okay, this is a guy that should probably be in the 2025 update. So probably we'll get that right at the end of spring training is when I like to put out like the full-fledged, you know, top 100 for the season. But we're gonna have team top prospect lists continuing to come out like every other week or every week or so throughout the next couple months. And then once those are done, we can do the true farm system rankings, which I'm excited to do as well. So we can get, because I saw, that was really popular the other day. I think Bleacher Report came out with their farm system rankings, and that stuff's always entertaining. But with us, like when I finish all the write ups for every farm system, we're going to legitimately do it from like a future value standpoint, right? Like how many prospects were 55 future value, 50 future value, 45 plus, and et cetera. And that's how we're going to decide, which farm systems are the best. Not just, oh, I really like this Brewer system, or I really like this Tiger system, which is kind of how I had to do it in the past. Now that we have these full-fledged write-ups for every system, we'll be able to really like show you in real time the rankings of every farm system based on the individual write-ups we have on each player.
Phenomenal. So the question is yours. And just to remind you of the question, which prospect out of the top 100 right now can reach the top 25 prospects in all of Major League Baseball, excluding the upcoming draft guys?
I would say, yeah, obviously. So excluding that, honestly, I haven't done enough on the draft cycle yet. And by the way, really excited about what we're bringing on in the draft side of things on the clock. Jared Perkins and Tyler Jennings. Tyler Jennings does some of the best draft stuff out there. They're going to be breaking down, well, first of all, interviewing a bunch of different top prospects, all that good stuff, but also we'll have draft rankings now and like mock drafts and top 25, like a lot more college baseball layers, draft layers. So really excited about that. But to answer the question, I think it's Eric Batanti. And Eric Batanti was trying to make sure I have it right. Third round pick in 2023, 87th overall. Big dude, 6'4, 225 pounds in the Brewers system there. And he was kind of overslot guy that they signed away from college. And I think they were really excited to be able to do that. The Brewers like to get creative with the bonus pool money, usually save a little bit on the front end and allows them to really spray the board later on. And they do really well in the third, fourth, fifth rounds where they find some guys that they overslot and tend to really make a good transition into pro ball. Batanti did just that. The dude's 6'4", 225, yet he swings the bat like a much more controlled and polished hitter. And when you look at what he did as an 18-year-old at the complex, and I always talk about these archetypes of hitters, right? Like guys that are that big generally are going to take a little bit more time to be able to get comfortable within their body and consistently repeat their swing and especially just have a comfortable approach. This guy tore through the complex, played 51 games there in 2024, hit 320, 451, 580. But you could say, okay, he's just like a man there, even though he's 18 years old, just a bigger body, like man among boys. 8 home runs. He's walking. He's patient. Maybe that bolstered the numbers. They push him because the Brewers like to be aggressive with the prospects that they're confident in. They push him to low A. And as an 18-year-old who's a big power hitter in low A, and the question was swing and miss issues, right? To aggressively push a player like that, I think says a lot. He hit 8 home runs in 28 games in
Mm.
low A as an 18-year-old. He kept the strikeout rate below 30%, continued to walk at a high clip. The EVs are really impressive. He's such an athletic hitter. I think this guy could be one of the more intriguing power bats in the minor leagues. And we're talking about maybe power that he's not even completely tapped into yet. There's a lot to dream on with Batanti, and I think if he has a strong start to the season, he'll be 19 for the entirety of the year. If he has a strong start to the season in low A and then probably gets pushed to high A pretty quickly, I think we could see him easily, push and be that like Xavier Isaac type of prospect that becomes very popular very quickly. But Batanti actually has a chance to play some third as well. He's more athletic than he gets credit for, so that also helps his case as well. I'm really excited about what he's going to do this upcoming season.
It's fascinating to hear this analysis, not that far removed from us getting asked kind of a different variation of this question. And the answer to this question that you gave was Jesus Mate in the
Mhm.
Milwaukee Brewers system. Young guy, I think at the time where you were talking about him, he was 17 years old. Now they have another 18-year-old in this system that's making you gush similarly to Jesus Mate. How do they continue to do this? Is this normal? This can't be normal.
No, it's not. I think we're going to talk about like best situations and stuff like that, and I think the Brewers are one of those teams that, when it comes to the hitting side, and obviously they do some impressive things on the mound, but they seem to marry the analytics and just the visual side of scouting as well as any organization. Where like their assistant head of player development, who we had on the call up, Brenton Del Chiaro, like he was a catcher throughout the minor leagues. They made it up to AAA, just grinder. He is so smart when it comes to like the mechanical side of things, and really like I think you look at the whole department they have there, and going through when I wrote up this farm system, every single swing I was looking at, I'm like, this is such a good swing. This is such a good swing. This is such a good swing. But then on top of that, they seem to really target guys that have really low chase rates and great swing decisions. And throughout the farm system, they're littered with that. So you have good swing mechanics and good swing decisions. Those guys are generally gonna perform pretty well. And then you add in the fact that it's like a freaky athlete like Jesus Mate. And I couldn't use him in this answer because now he's a consensus top 50 prospect, but
Yeah.
he was the answer, I think, last time we had a question like this. That's a good catch. And now you look at a Batanti where it is that like advanced swing where the ground ball rate's only 30% because he can elevate so consistently and his mechanics are so good. But then he's also a guy that's chasing less than 20% of the time, which is really helping, I think, keep the strikeout rate in check. And he hits lefties well. And it's like, how is a 6'4", 225-pound 18-year-old this polished? The Brewers just seem to find guys like that. It's really impressive.
It's incredible. Is there anybody on the pitching side that you have ID'd, or just this guy really stuck out to you?
he stuck out to me the most. The pitching side is tough because generally, like a guy that makes that climb usually comes out of freaking nowhere. We're talking
Yeah.
about like a Quinn Matthews this past year, or even like a Jonah Tong with the Mets. I would say that's probably the best answer. And even though he's a top 100 prospect at some other outlets, he's not for us at this stage. Jonah Tong with the Mets, like he generates a borderline outlier vert on the fastball. The breaking ball has gotten a lot better. He has the curveball and a slider. So I think if the command can continue to come along, I could see Jonah Tong being one of those guys that just thrusts his way into the top 25 conversation. Probably unlikely. Like he'd have to really light the world on fire, but it wouldn't shock me given what he did last year. I mean, this guy struck out in 113 innings, 160 batters between high A and double A, low A, high A, and double A in his age 21 season. So he's got something special going for him there.
Fantastic. So our next question is Major League Baseball focused. As you can tell here on the mailbag, we do it all prospects, all the way up to the big league level. One thing that I forgot to say in the intro of this episode, we have a new segment here on the Just Baseball Show. It's called The Last Word. And I thought about it laying in my bed, and I just thought, we need something at the end, a little bit of spunk, a little bit of fire. So, what I mean by the last word is this segment will come in the last 5-10 minutes of every single episode. Either myself, Arm, or Jack will bring one. And it can be completely random. It could be baseball history. It could be a prospect Arm wants to talk about, and a prospect Arm thinks that stinks. Major League Baseball stuff, college, fantasy baseball, cards, anything, or just completely random. And I have one to start us off for the last word at the end of the video that is completely random. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. And then of course, let us know in the YouTube comments below what you think of the segment, The Last Word. All right, let's get to question number 2. Aram, is it better for the White Sox to move off Luis Robert before the start of the season or hope that he stays healthy, returns to himself, then try to move him at the deadline? If he is traded now, what could a potential trade package look like considering the lack of center field talent in this free agent class? So I think before we construct some Luis Robert mock trades, let's discuss timing. Do you think it is better for the White Sox to try and trade him this offseason? Or do you think that they should wait until the deadline and see if anybody becomes desperate?
I think so. I was very pro them moving him, early last year before the season, even before it started to get rough for him. And then I think once it got to the point where it was clearly a lost year, I get why the White Sox opted to hold on to him at that point. Now I think they're so deep in it, they might as well just wait and see if he bounces back. I just I look at what he did or didn't do last year, and then you look at the financial situation, and I just think at this point you might as well roll the dice and see if he can rebuild his value, and you move him then. Whatever you're going to get for Luis Robert at this point, like right now, I just don't think is going to alter things too much franchise wise, and you have the risk of Robert bouncing back. Then at that point, I mean, I have a question for you here, basically, which is if Robert puts up a 90 WRC plus and 2 WAR in 120 games next season, which sounds terrible, right? But that would actually be better by a decent margin of what he did last year. Last year it was 84 WRC plus and a .5 F4. Would you sign him then? So this would be the off season of 2025, right? So after this coming season, would you sign him to a 2 year, $35 million deal, like
Without
after the season?
1,000%, yes.
You still would, even if he was
Absolutely.
super mediocre, you would do it again. You'd sign
Absolutely.
him.
Because I
Okay.
want to play slight devil's advocate to what you were saying about maybe waiting it out with Luis Robert. I'm a little bit nervous that Luis Robert is a product of his environment. Because when you look at Luis Robert from last year, it just got worse and worse as the White Sox continue to get worse and
hmm
worse. I think about a guy like Luis Robert. How locked in is he in the month of August when his team has lost 13 or 14 in a row? And it just probably feels like a job to him where he has to come to the ballpark, right? He's not in a contract year. He already signed his contract and he's really just going there to get his hacks in and he's kind of going to see what happens. Like the ability to be locked in if he were able to move to a Philadelphia, or, I have a couple of mock trades that I think would make sense on other teams where he feels like he's in more of a winning window and you get more out of him. The reason I say that is the White Sox are projected to be, again, one of the worst teams in Major League history again, right? We're coming out with their win total. It's at 50 and a half, 49 and a half. Do you just get more of these prolonged stretches where Luis Robert is checked out? Now, I know that might be a detriment to Luis Robert, knowing that if you're a team getting him, right, is he checked out in these moments? But I think when you're on a team that is so historically bad, it's worth asking the question. So if I'm the White Sox, do I want to take a gamble on that? Because at the end of the day, what is Luis Robert even playing for? To get traded? That's not
Yes.
very. Would that
That
incentivize him? Because he was already probably in that boat at the end of last year, and that was some of his worst months. So for me, I feel like if I'm the White Sox, I got to do it now.
you're not going to get much. I think that's the problem. Like if you're getting one pretty good piece, is that worth it?
You think it's
I
that
think
low? I,
I
I
think
think
it
I
is.
think I disagree because I think in
He'd be gone if it
2023
wasn't.
this guy was 38 jacks, 20 steals, one of the best center fielders in Major League Baseball. We're just a year removed from that. I
And that was
agree
the
with you
first time
though.
he's ever done that. Like
He still
if
is
you
young.
look, does age matter though? He was hurt when he was 21 or when he was 23. He was hurt when he was 24. He was healthy when he was 25, and we saw the season that he had. Then he was hurt and checked out when he was 26. So we have one great season. We have a great part of a season. We we have a good part of a season, and then we have what we had last year. And if he was on, a pre-arb deal or arb one or arb two, then I could see it. Of course, if he's playing pretty well, like it's a good contract. But if he plays anything close to what he played like last year, it's so the way the contract works, it's 15 million this year,
Yep.
and then it's two club options for 20 million in 2026 and
Mhm.
20 million in 2027.
Yep.
If Luis Robert plays like that again, I'm like begrudgingly picking up the $20 million option. I'm kind of pissed about it at that point. Like you almost don't even want to pick it up. And that's the craziest part. So like when you're trading for Luis Robert right now, you're getting him a 1 year 15 million, and then you're at a spot where like it should be a slam dunk that you're picking up that $20 million club option. But if he does exactly what he did last year again, or he's hurt again, you got to pick it up and pray, and now you got 20 million sitting on the books again. That's the part where it's tough. Like he struck out 33% of the time last year.
Oh yeah, he sucked. There's no doubt about it. He sucked last year. What I will say is though, I guess in your hypothetical where he turns in another bad season, let's say 90 WRC plus 2.0 F4. Let's say he is a little bit better, but that's still below average. Now you can't trade him at all. I
I
mean,
think
what then is then you'd get actually nothing. And I don't want to risk that if I'm Chicago. So I agree with you. It's not going to be a great offer. But if I'm the White Sox, I don't know if I want to take the gamble again. So that's why if I'm Chris Getz, I am looking to trade him this offseason.
I think if the offer was
Are you
decent,
saying they should gamble in the middle of the season because you think Luis Robert is going to play better? Or are
yeah,
you saying, so you are saying that you think he's going to be much better?
I'm hoping. I think
Are you
I think
willing to
there's
take that gamble?
I mean, I think at this point, yes, because the risk reward is like kind of meager. I think if you're probably getting a top 15 prospect and then two more top 30 guys for Luis Robert, in a
No.
system right now. Like I don't think you're getting that much for him. So if you're not getting that much right now, I'd rather start the season with one of the few familiar faces for whatever fans are left and hope that he gets off to a good start. Teams will be probably pretty desperate at some point, you'd hope, and you move them when you can, or you move them at the deadline, where a team that's trading for him would look at it like, okay, we got three pennant runs with him potentially, but I just think at this point, coming off the year that he had, and the fact that it's two club options at 20 million apiece, which could be great. It could be great value. But like right now, if you trade him right now, it's a 3 year, $55 million contract essentially. It's a good deal if he plays like he did in 2023. You're kind of pissed off if he plays like he did in 2024. The good news is for a team that trades for him, they could just decline the option if he's miserable or hurt or whatever. But at that point, if that's even a remote possibility, how much are you going to give up for this guy? And I think if you're a GM for another team, how much are you really willing to give up for Luis Robert at this point? We're talking about the White Sox side of it and how uncertain we both are about what he's going to do this coming year. Well, on the other side, that uncertainty is even scarier for me because I'm a GM trying to keep my job or a GM that just might even be in good standing, don't want to risk it. This is a trade that could really blow up in your face. So, how much are you willing to give up for a guy like this?
Let me give you an option of a trade that I think could be made this offseason for Luis Robert. And there's would be some definite upside coming back, but there is some downside, kind of similar to the player that Luis Robert is. Who's now the odd man out in Cincinnati? Noelvi
I don't.
Marte.
Oh God.
I mean, what if we packaged a deal around Noelvi Marte, potentially Connor Phillips, right? The Reds just brought in Owen White. So the Reds, they'd be buying low essentially, sort of. I'm not sure exactly how the verbiage all works with so many buy low, sell high guys at the same deal. But you got a young controllable arm in Connor Phillips, who has at least pitched in Major League Baseball. Maybe you just add him to the slew of arms in Chicago, see which one of them make it. I mean, they have a decent amount of Connor Phillips, but it never hurts to have more starting pitching depth. Then you get a guy like Noelvi Marte, who was a top prospect, PED suspension, now seemingly does not have a spot with Cincinnati at all. Cincinnati then takes the leap with a Luis Robert being like, please, we hope. But at the same time, they're not going to play Marte anyway. And it seems like Connor Phillips won't have a spot either.
Yeah.
So that's where I was thinking here. Upside, downside. Let's see if both guys just need a change of scenery here.
I actually think that's the best. Like I think that's the most realistic swap there. Where like for the Reds, the exposure is minimal, right?
Yeah.
For Nick Krall, like you have it, and for a team that's very worried about finances, you have a way to get out of it. Worst case scenario, right? You can
Yeah.
if he's a disaster, you can decline it. But I would imagine that him in Cincinnati would not be a disaster. And if where I do think the buy-in is the biggest part is the defense, right?
Yeah.
And if he's going out and playing a good center field like we saw him play in 2023, even easier to pick up that potential $20 million club option, which should be a no-brainer.
And
Like
we're
if he is
hearing, yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying if he has a 100 WRC plus and plays great defense in center and steals 25 bags, it's a no-brainer pickup. So yeah, I mean, that would make a lot of sense. And like Phillips at this point, I think needs a change of scenery. Noelvi Marte definitely needs a change of scenery. And I honestly think like it would. I guess the question would then become: would you take that bird in hand if you're Chris Getz, or would you rather? Because that's a gamble in itself too with those two players, right? Both hit an absolute wall last year. Phillips at least came out the other side a little bit at the end of the year, found his command after going on the development list. Would you rather roll the dice on that return, or would you rather roll the dice on Luis Robert?
Hmm. I am I'm more worried he struggles again in Chicago. Not to say that he's not talented, that if he goes to Cincinnati, he won't struggle. My real worry is that there will be zero buy-in for him in Chicago.
Yeah, that's
I'm really
probably
worried
very
about it
possible.
because you're talking about the defense. There's no reason for that to start to taper off. There's no
No,
reason, but it did, which
it
tells me that
completely
it's a
did
buy-in problem. So
for
why
sure.
would he now buy into this? What's his like?
The only
He
motive would
didn't.
be to play well enough, like because now he really realizes it. Like the only way out is to play better. Like that's the only thing you'd have to hope for, but that might not be enough of a
And wouldn't
motivator
that
for
be
him.
bad for the clubhouse? Like a guy who knows that he's only playing to get traded, and he's your
I mean,
best player hypothetically.
with these young guys coming up, I will say like I don't think Luis Roberts like a disaster or anything like that, but
No.
I don't know if he's the best quote unquote vet to have
Yeah.
there to be like ushering in the new guys. That is another point where like I don't know if I'd say follow Luis Roberts' lead, right? Like I don't know if that's the standard I want set for the rest of my players. And again, I'm not saying he's like a disaster or anything terrible, but he's definitely not a clubhouse glue guy, I don't
Yeah.
think, from
He
everything
might
I've
be.
read and heard.
But if he's consistently on the trade block, I mean, he can't be the greatest locker room guy.
No, there's no way. So I mean, I think that is you actually cooked on that. I I
Don't
think
say
with the
actually as if you're surprised. You
I'm just
dickhead.
surprised 'cause I was prepared to pretty much be like, I don't think it's going to be worth it for them, and because it's just every single mock trade I've seen anywhere, I'm like, ugh, I'd rather just roll the dice on Robert. Um,
100%. I
but
agree with that.
Marte, I think, needs to get out of there.
Yeah.
And they could use more infield depth without a doubt. Bring them up there. Like you got Colson Montgomery as well, but like just they need more irons in the fire. Brian Ramos, like see who can figure it out. And I honestly think Noelvi's going to end up at first base anyways. And then Phillips is a guy that stuff wise is outrageous. The stuff is crazy. Worst case scenario, he's a really good high leverage reliever with control, years of control. Control throwing strikes wise is the thing that he needs to figure out. But I think both those guys getting in new situations. I know I like people. Oh, the White Sox are they going to develop them? I think the White Sox development is better now, and especially from the pitching side. I think I'd have more confidence in them getting Phillips right, but you have a buy low opportunity here on a Noelvi Marte who, if he's anything close to what he was, a lot of people expected him to be, it's a pretty nice get for you.
And think about it. You know the Red system well. They also have more infield prospects coming up. Like Edwin
Yep.
Arroyo is one of their better prospects in the system. So it's like even throughout, we're not even talking about the big league level after trading for Gavin Lux. We're also talking about the minor league level. And what this team is like one great right-handed outfield bat away for being a real contender.
Yeah,
Why not try with Luis Robert?
I
So
I
that's where
think
I'm at there.
fit wise too, dude. Like that he could be the player that puts them over the top. But like
And
if
let's say the
he's
White Sox want a little bit more, give him another prospect that is in your top 30, maybe.
yeah, that's fine. Like you can do that. But if it's centered around those guys, like they're both kind of they are the odd man out at this
Yeah.
point to your point, and you could definitely throw in another prospect in there and make it a little bit more intriguing for them. And that's not a bad option. I wish the Reds would do it. I wish because that would really put them in a spot where the upside is so immense that you can really get excited about the ball club. I already am like I like where they're
Me too.
at, but that would really put me over the top.
I also really like this buy-in. I was listening to a clip from our friends over at Foul Territory, and Brent Suter was talking about the buy-in that the Reds have this year. That this is their year to win, and outside of trading for Gavin Lux and of course bringing Brady Singer in here, but you did trade Jonathan India. Make one more trade like this.
Mm-hmm.
Be like, this is the final piece. We needed a right-handed outfielder. I just got you all Luis Robert. Let's go win this division. That
Yeah.
is going to send shockwaves. Like even if Luis Robert isn't super elite, even if he's like above average, just that feeling for the rest of the team, like holy shit, we got Luis Robert. Like let's fucking go, and
And
they're
he'll
going to hit
feed
the
off
ground
of it
running.
too.
And I
And
think that'll help Robert.
yeah. Oh, I think Ellie De La Cruz will be a great wind at the back of Luis Robert. Like that, it's going to be motivating. I think just being able to share a field with a guy that plays the way that he does.
Exactly. And imagine those two in the middle of the lineup when they're both clicking.
Oh,
Jeez, lefty
yep.
righty too. Oh, it's such a good fit. All right, let's get to question number 3. Ready?
Yes.
All right, this is a great one. Who's one player you guys are confident is going to have a bounce back season this year? This is asked by O Geary 29 on Instagram. Also, did I mention who asked the question on the last one? It's a great name. I think I might have forgotten. Loose and Groovy Baseball Show on Instagram.
That's great.
Phenomenal handle. So, I got my guy. I also have a guy on the pitching side. Do you want to go first or you want me to?
Yeah, I got one hitter, one pitcher as well. Pitcher,
Great.
Gavin Williams for me. I
Mm,
just, I think one, he's going to being in a pretty important role for the Guardians this year. And I think it's been a priority. It's going to be a priority for them to help get him right, kind of get him back to where he needs to be, where we saw him in his big league debut and when he was one of the best pitching prospects in baseball. Health had, I think, affected his release a little bit. When guys have shoulder problems, it can change kind of the orientation of their throws. And I think that's exactly what happened with Gavin last year. So when the release point changed a little bit, I think it affected the movement profile, and the fastball kind of lost a little bit of that vert and that ride and started to have a little bit more like a flatter, dead zoney shape. But he still gets really good extension, and just being able to be healthy, we saw his fastball up a tick. So we're talking about a guy that gets plus extension with a fastball. It's really plus extension with a fastball that was up a tick, averaging 96 and a half. Like, if he can get to a point where he can start to generate the same level of vert and really get the shapes going the way that he had them in the past, which I think he can now that he's healthy and removed from the shoulder issues. The curveball is an absolute banger. The slider is a good pitch as well when he's commanding it. And that fastball has in the past flashed, comfortably plus and borderline plus plus. So if he can get that fastball where he wants it to be again, I think that's a dude that's still just 25 years old. He's in the perfect situation to kind of tweak things back to where he needs them to be. And again, he's a really important part of what the Guardians are going to be trying to do next year. I think being a full year removed from some of the discomfort that he was dealing with, I expect Gavin Williams to bounce back in a big way next year.
So I understand the angle that you're coming from here. It's more of Gavin Williams takes that next step that we kind of thought he would last year, and he didn't really get there. I'm looking at a guy who has now been in the league for a few seasons and is coming off his worst season and was actually sent down during the year. And I'm hoping that him getting sent down was a message up here for all those looking at YouTube. I'm pointing to my head. A message to Camilo Doval of the San Francisco Giants. I'm going to continue to stand by this guy because the numbers last year weren't even that bad in terms of the expected numbers, right? 4.88 ERA, really bad, and even got sent down. Walk rate, 14%, not good. But he still had a 3.44 expected ERA. He still struck out batters at a 29% rate. The stuff in a vacuum is still unbelievably elite. I mean, it's a wipeout slider. It's a 99-mile-an-hour cutter with a 98-mile-an-hour sinker. If this guy can get back to doing Camilo Doval things, right? If we're talking about a bounce back, this guy was a 2.93 ERA in 2023, 2.53 ERA in 2022, and I know 2021 it was just a cup of coffee, but still a 3.00 ERA with incredible advanced numbers as well. This guy's got wipeout stuff. I still think he can be a top 10 closer in baseball. That's the type of pitcher I see with Camilo Doval. It's just he had a welcome to the bigs type season where it went really bad for him. San Francisco, they obviously had problems internally. Send him back down. I'm looking for him to come back up and reestablish himself as one of the better relievers in Major League Baseball, and potentially the Giants slot him back into the closer role, even though Ryan Walker fully took over that and deserves to be that closer on opening day. Maybe he's a trade piece. I don't know. I still believe in this arm.
I mean, the stuff's crazy. That's a buy-in guy as well, I think, there. And I think the team being more competitive this year, which we'll get to in a couple questions, like I think there might be a little bit more reason to just, okay, put whatever personal rift is aside here. And like, you have a chance to pitch at high leverage for a team that, could make some waves this year. But, with Gavin, the way I was looking at it is he made 16 starts in 23, had a 3.29 ERA in the big leagues, and then 16 starts in 24. And it was a 4.86. So like, just being able to get back to that low threes and then build up the innings, I absolutely think he can get to where he needs to be. And then on the offensive side, Nolan Jones for me, like what he did as a rookie was outrageous, right? Like he had an unbelievable season. And then again, another guy that I think like sometimes players come back from injury and we kind of forget that they were injured. And I think they're not themselves. And we're just like watching them struggle on the field and forget that they were dealing with an injury. Like this is a dude that in 2023, in 106 games, hit 20 bombs. He had a 931 OPS. He stole 20 bags as well and hit 22 doubles. Like the 20-20-20 across the board is crazy. The approach is so good. He hits the ball incredibly hard. I think just between hitting the ball as hard as he does and the swing decisions that he consistently makes, There is no reason for this guy to have a 641 OPS next year. He couldn't slug at all. This past season, it was 79 games when he wasn't hurt. He had a 320 slug. To me, that's just a guy that physically wasn't where he wanted to be, and I think was trying to fight through it and play through it, and just was a shell of himself. I mean, we've seen him move well, both like in the outfield, didn't do that nearly as well this past year either. He has one of the strongest arms in Major League Baseball. In the outfield, I think he's a really dynamic player that, with his ability to walk and the EVs and then stealing bags as well, I think he's going to have a big year this year and bounce back after kind of a lost season.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Watching Nolan Jones last year, it felt like I was watching a different player. And I think that had to do with, what you're talking about from a health perspective. But, of course, pitchers now keying in on him, being like, all right, Nolan Jones is like the guy to watch out for in this lineup. I think just a lot of factors at hand here. But, from what you were saying, I definitely agree with you there on Nolan Jones. Mine is easy, and it's kind of a cop out, but I just can't help myself. Michael Harris.
Yeah.
And it's not, I know everyone, like I said, it's a very easy one, right? He's coming off a 2024 season where 16 home runs, 10 stolen bases, slash 264, 304, 418, all career lows for him. Just another reminder, Michael Harris is going to be 24 years old, and that's why I don't think it's necessarily a cop-out, because I just wanted to remind people that this guy is 2 years younger than Adley Rutschman, right? And we use Adley Rutschman kind of as a scale here for, young players in this game at just 24 years old. And instead of just saying, I think he can bounce back to the 808 OPS he was in 2023, I'm going to go a step farther and say that we get a Jackson Merrill type season from him with even a little bit more upside. Because I think that there's more upside in some of these on base skills, from Michael Harris. I'd love to see him walk at a 6-7% rate this year instead of the 4.5 to 5 that he's been doing. I'm also looking at a couple of swing decisions that he made. You could tell that his pull rate was up, that he was trying to pull more fly balls, which is generally a good thing, but I think it led to a little bit more swing and miss. I think it just kind of got him out of his element a little bit, as a hitter, still trying to, develop himself and find who he truly is as a hitter. I think this guy has 25 home run upside. I think he has 20 stolen bases in the tank, but he's also a guy who hit 264, and the advanced metrics tell us he got very, very unlucky, right? A 370 x woba or somewhere in that range. He was also 284 expected batting average, 344 x woba, excuse me. Just good quality of contact, and just a guy who I think is on the precipice of being one of the best center fielders in baseball.
He was hurt as well,
Yeah.
and dealt with that hammy, and it was a pretty bad one that kept him out for a while. So just getting his legs back under him, I think, took some time, and I mean we saw that as a result and as a hitter. But he hits the living crap out of the ball for like his size. He's 6 foot, 195 pounds. Like he really, really, really hits the ball hard. The thing with him that's always been frustrating is just how often he puts it on the ground,
Yeah.
and I think that's just the one thing we're waiting on here, right? Like if he can get it in the air a little bit more consistently, we can see that power uptick, for sure. And it's just kind of waiting on that front. But I think just naturally getting healthy, if he can be any little bit more selective than he is, right? He chases it like a 40% clip. If he can
Yeah.
even cut that down to the mid 30s to low 30s, I think it makes a world of a difference. You can't teach the bat speed. You can't teach just the raw ability that he has. And I think that's why he's definitely a guy that's going to put together a much better season now that he'll be healthy, hopefully for the entirety of it.
Absolutely. And before we get to question number 4, just another reminder to use code JustBaseball on BetMGM for that first bet offer up to $1,500 for all of those people looking to bet on the NFL and college football. If you didn't hear the ad read from the beginning of this episode, they have tons of odds boost tokens, parlay stuff. They even have a competition where you answer historical football questions and you get a chance to win $1 million in bonus bets. They're doing a ton of stuff there. So if you're interested in betting NFL, college football, or even any MLB futures, make sure to use code JustBaseball. And on top of that, quick break. All right, question number 4. What is a realistic return for Pablo Lopez if the Twins were to shop him? Could he net them a player of the caliber of Kobe Mayo of the Baltimore Orioles? This was asked by SHAAN_Don8 on Instagram. So when I saw this question, I thought to myself, are the Twins really shopping Pablo Lopez? And then I looked it up. Multiple reports that the Twins are at least listening. And if they're at least listening, they could be intrigued by a prospect package and probably end up dealing him in the right deal. So that's what we're here to do, Arm. Let's deal him in the right deal. So just to look at his contract again, he's making 21.75 million over 3 years. So basically you'd be getting Pablo Lopez for about 3 years, 64-ish million dollars. Pablo Lopez, of course, is coming off a rough season from an ERA perspective, but I think we saw towards the tail end of the year. And if you look at his underlying metrics, that was a little bit of a blip in the radar. We talked about it during the middle of the season. He was leaving fastballs middle all the time and just getting pelted. That's not the Pablo Lopez we know. Pablo Lopez has much better command of the strike zone than that. He still has great stuff. He has years of control. He's not that old. This is a guy who I'd be IDing from if I was another team that I would really, really want to add to my rotation because he has ace upside, but also the downside of him, he's still going to eat plenty of innings for you and still be a productive pitcher. So we got a couple of teams who might be interested in a Pablo Lopez. Wouldn't you think?
Yeah, I mean, there should be a lot of teams. I just wonder how many are still in the market of taking on $22 million. It should be every single one,
Yep.
essentially. But you know how it is here, and I think that's part of the reason why the Twins are. If they're going to move anybody, this is the guy that trims the payroll the most, and they have a ton of arms at not Pablo Lopez caliber, but then they could create room for David Festa and Sebby Matthews and some of these other guys where they could justify it to themselves. But clearly, like this is their best arm. And in the second half, he had a 2.77 ERA. The one thing with me though is I wonder if teams are just wary that Pablo Lopez is just a very streaky pitcher that is going to be frontline type through stretches, and then as you said, like miss middle through stretches, and somehow settle every single year. Whether it's a good first half or a bad first half, and good first half or bad second half, it kind of flip flops some years, and just settle with like a 3.5 and 3.6. Like, is that what he is? I don't even really fully know at this point, but he's definitely a difficult player, I think, to figure out exactly who he is. And I wonder if that puts teams off a little bit. I think, again, any team would be excited to add him, but how much prospect capital are you going to give up on top of taking on the 60, almost $65 million?
Yeah, it's tough because I want to ID some teams who haven't really done anything and haven't really spent, which kind of makes me think that they don't want to take on a contract like Pablo Lopez's. But there are two teams that I ID'd that I'm forcing them to do so because they should. And I'm looking at a team like the Atlanta Braves, and I'm looking at a team like the Baltimore Orioles, who they already mentioned in the Kobe Mayo deal. The Braves Twitter is on fire. Like they do
They got to
not
chill out,
like
man.
Alex Anthopoulos right now, which I can understand. You're sitting there in an offseason, you're seeing the Mets sign Juan Soto, you're seeing the Phillies trade for Jesus Luzardo and making more moves, and you're thinking to yourself, why are we not competing here? I understand where the Braves are coming from because you're not really going to add to the offense. Like, okay, they didn't sign Willie Adames. Maybe they're hoping for a little bit of bounce back from Orlando Arcia, or potentially Nacho Alvarez coming up through the ranks. And then the rotation, right? They know they're going to get Strider back. Can they weather the storm with Grant Holmes and Ian Anderson at the back of the rotation until Strider gets back? And then whoever wins that job wins that job. Of course, you got AJ Smith-Shawver, Hurston Waldrop, of course, coming up, J.R. Ritchie. So they got irons in the fire, but do you want to compete really with the Dodgers here? Do you want to win this division going away? Do you want to get back to 100 wins? And you haven't spent anything yet. I think that the Braves should be in on Pablo Lopez. And then, of course, the Orioles, of course, right? Like Sagano, Charlie Morton, Trevor Rogers. These are arms that you want, that you're good with pitching in August when one of your guys already went down. Not guys who you expect to go 170 innings this season. I think it
Mm-hmm.
gets to Dean Kramer and then it drops off. Maybe Morton gets away from father time for one more year and is able to give you that. But you can't expect better than a 4.2, 4.3 ERA, and that's not going to get you to the promised land. A guy like Pablo Lopez with his upside can. So,
Yeah.
but what would they be willing to give up? And my first question to you is to kind of gauge where you're at with Pablo Lopez. Is Samuel Basayo too much?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I don't see them doing that while also taking on the money that they'd be taking on at that point. I think it'd be too steep because they could have just signed, or tried to sign somebody and given up a comp pick, and
Yeah.
they didn't want to do that because they didn't want to give up the comp pick. So I don't think it's too different, like where you're trading a top prospect and then taking on that money as well. I I don't see how Mayo or the way Michael Elias has operated to this point. I just would be shocked that now it's Mayo or Basayo going for a Pablo
I
Lopez.
totally agree. I didn't think they would trade Basayo either. I more wanted to gauge like what would a package look like, and that a prospect of Basayo's caliber is too much.
Too much, I would say. I
So I think the Braves are actually the team that is more likely to do it than
yes,
the Orioles. Like we want the Orioles to do it. They totally can do it, but we know that they won't. And another team that probably won't either, but maybe, I think is the Atlanta Braves. I
I like the
think
Braves
it's got to be either Waltrip or AJ Smith Shawver.
or Drake Baldwin. I
I don't
I
think they
think.
want to trade Drake Baldwin.
I mean,
I
here's
know.
the thing that's weird with Baldwin though is like Sean Murphy's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
I know he had a bad year last year, but he was hurt and like dealt with that oblique all year. They felt like that was a big reason why he struggled. Like this guy is a year removed from back-to-back 5 WAR seasons
Yeah.
as their catcher. And the problem is you can't really rotate anybody through the DH spot because, and it's a good problem because you've got one of the best DHs in the game in Marcell Ozuna, but you can't rotate anybody through the DH spot. So are you going to have Drake Baldwin just sitting there on the bench playing twice a week, once or twice a week?
Can Baldwin play the outfield?
He's never done it.
Okay,
He's
never mind.
athletic, but he's never done
Yeah.
it. And they haven't
I
even
just remember
bothered
watching
to
him at the
try.
I remember watching him at the Futures game. I was like, this guy could I think this guy could play corner as well. He's so athletic.
And he was in the fall league. They didn't have him play anywhere else.
Yeah, then never mind. Because you're not moving him to first with Matt Olson. You're not moving him to catcher with Sean Murphy, and you're not moving him to DH. So I get it. But he'd be a tough guy for Braves Nation, Braves country to give up. But again, you're getting Pablo Lopez, and then you slot him into rotation with Chris Sale when Spencer Strider comes back, Reynaldo Lopez and Schwellenbach. I mean, we're cooking here. We can give up a prospect in this sort of deal.
Yeah.
I'm okay with
And they
doing it.
and I mean, they just drafted, I think, a couple catchers in this past draft, like overslotted a guy in the 5th round. Anthopoulos has had success with backstops in the past. Baldwin is actually an example of that, obviously. I think they'd rather not move him in a lot of situations, but like Baldwin to AAA would just be a waste of time. And then you'd
Yeah.
just be stashing him in the big leagues and he'd barely be playing. I think the Twins would prefer Baldwin because they've got a ton of arms. I think in the upper minors or guys that they could plug in immediately.
What's
And
their
Baldwin, I think,
answer? What's their
would be
answer
the
after? I
future
was
behind the dish.
I was just gonna say, what's their answer after Ryan Jeffers? Because Ryan Jeffers is just 27 years old, but he's got about 2 years left. And then what? I was looking at their system, not a lot of catching prospects.
No, no, and I mean, even when you look at the situation now, like Christian Vasquez is your backup. You probably would love to just DFA him or dump him at some point. This is a team that just claimed Diego Cartaya, right? Like I think they parted with a prospect to be able to get him, but like their catching depth is so thin that they just claimed Diego Cartaya to put him on the 40-man roster immediately right after the Dodgers DFA'd him. Like to me, that's kind of indicative of a team that is eager for some catching help there for sure. Um, and this is a team that can rotate the DH spot a little bit more too, to where if you want to keep Jeffers and Baldwin in the lineup at points because guys are banged up or whatever it may be, you can do that, right? Jeffers DH 34 games last year. And I think Baldwin has a chance to develop into a pretty good defender. I think where Jeffers has gotten, he's fine. But I think you might even get to a point where Baldwin's actually a better defender than Jeffers, and Jeffers can start to DH a little bit more too.
Do you think it'd be and Baldwin?
With Baldwin, with the trade like on top of
Yeah,
Baldwin,
like it would be Baldwin and for Lopez. Or do you think Baldwin's
maybe
enough?
like a flyer. Baldwin's
Yeah,
good, man.
he is
He's a
good.
really good player. I think Baldwin and maybe an arm like a Cade Keeler or something like that.
Was there any other teams you ID'd? Because I just think that one's the perfect fit. I
The
think the Orioles, of
Cubs,
course, is a great fit, but will they do it?
but they're the freaking Orioles. Yeah, the
Yeah.
Cubs. I think the Cubs have a lot of upper minors prospects that they'd probably be willing to part with in a deal here, and seemingly they're okay with taking on some money. And I'd like to get a right hander in the fold there, and like
Yeah.
I think a Kevin Alcantara or a James Triantos headlining a deal would be very similar to a Drake Baldwin headlining a deal. I think Baldwin's better than both of those guys, but in the grand scheme, I think public perception is not too different there. And yeah, maybe with a couple more complementary pieces with Alcantara or Triantos, but I could see the Cubs definitely being interested in something like that as well.
Anybody else? I like the Cubs fit a lot. Instead of talking about other teams, we can finalize a Cubs deal and kind of see which one we like better. So if it
Yeah.
was Kevin Alcantara, because Triantos, like, we've talked about him so much on the show, and I didn't know much about him. And I've like really started to look into him, was looking at the numbers. I was watching some video, and I'm like, he, like, you hope he slugs 350.
The
Like,
the slug is light for sure.
it's so light, and you gotta hope a lot of stuff works for him to be productive at the big league level. I think. Like for me, I would be after a guy with like Kevin Alcantara because I think his projection and his upside is much higher. So that's
Oh,
that's
for sure.
that's someone
And
I'd
I
rather
mean,
grab.
you guarantee it's a guy that could guaranteed go out and play center field for you, like defensively tomorrow,
The
and
thing
at a
is,
high
though,
level.
Twins do have a lot of outfield prospects, right? Their outfield is kind of filled right now. And then, of course, you have Walker Jenkins, one of the best prospects in baseball. You have Emmanuel Rodriguez, another one of the best
Yep.
prospects in baseball. So, do they really want an outfielder? So, it's like, I'd rather Kevin Alcantara, the prospect, in a vacuum, but maybe Triantos is more of the answer. But isn't Triantos just kind of like Edward Julien, sorta? like,
Like in a different, like in a total like
in a
different
different
way. But I
dimension.
understand what you're saying from like a positional value perspective.
Yes.
Yeah, like it's second base, and he's come along a little bit to be able to play like a passable third. But I think he might almost be a breath of fresh air there. I think there's a lot of similarities to Brooks Lee in terms of like bat to ball is really really good, and then it's like okay, well, what else are you getting here? But I think there's a lot of people in the industry that really do like him and Triantos, and I could see the Twins being excited about getting a player of just his hit caliber coming back. Like it's such an easy plus hit tool. He was a menace on the base paths last year as well, and 40 plus bags I think. So I could see just them wanting a high floor prospect, a guy that plugs in immediately, and I think you can find a spot for him. Like they've tried him in the outfield a little bit. Again, he's played some second, he's played some third. He can kind of be a super utility guy for you, kind of the way that Willie Castro has been. So that could be an option for them, and you can start him in AAA too, because I think there's definitely some things that he could just work on in AAA and just continuing to tap into a little bit more power. So it's not like you got to force him right in there tomorrow. And I don't think he grabs a 40 spot yet. So I think that'd be the best fit for them, I think. But they could probably use a right-handed hitting outfielder at the same time as well. Like I know they've got other guys coming up, like you said, but Manuel Rodriguez played 44 games last year because of the thumb issue, and he's continuously been hurt. Trevor Larnach's a left-handed hitting outfielder. Matt Wallner's a left-handed hitting outfielder, and Byron Buxton is you want a backup plan for Byron Buxton. So like they could say, hey, why not just add another outfielder who can really go get it? But I could also see with the uncertainty health wise with Royce Lewis, Brooks Lee has yet to prove anything. Jose Miranda was hurt and kind of had a little bit of a down year, but then bounced back and was fine. But still,
Good. Yeah.
um, I would probably argue they could use some infield depth more than anything. So I think Triantos would be a good get for them.
I feel like if I'm the Twins GM, I'm just keeping him instead of getting Triantos. Like I would just keep Pablo Lopez. Our team is still going to be pretty damn good. I know we want to cut some payroll, but I'm looking at the Twins roster and thinking to myself, this team can win the division. I think you get their bullpen is still great. I still think that the rotation is very solid. I expect Joe Ryan to have a big year, and their lineup is still really solid if they stay healthy. So if I'm the Twins, Drake Baldwin, I think, is the perfect prospect
Yep.
piece that fits into my system. So what I would be doing is calling AA and saying, we do want Baldwin. If you're willing to give us Baldwin, and I'd be willing to trade you Pablo Lopez. If AA says no, I think I just keep him. I don't think I
Yeah.
want either of the Cubs guys. I don't think it's worth it to trade Pablo for, because I agree with you. I think they could both make sense and they're both intriguing, but I still don't think it's worth it if I'm the Twins. Because Pablo Lopez, I still think is fantastic, and like you still have
Yeah.
for 3 more years, and I know he's expensive, but maybe you can then trade him at the deadline or something, and maybe get a team that's more desperate. But I just wouldn't trade him now for those two guys that you named from the Cubs.
I mean, if you're asking me which package I would rather have, and I'm in the twin situation, it's Baldwin. It's not even close to your
Yeah.
point. And I mean, Baldwin, of course, you're losing Pablo Lopez. You're not getting better. But in terms of like, if you're going to get a prospect back that could actually help you
Like this year.
maintain, Drake Baldwin will help you this year
Yeah.
and beyond, like without a doubt. And having that catching tandem of Jeffers and Baldwin is extremely exciting. And then also, we're talking about a team that has some payroll concerns and everything. You now have the catching position like accounted for at the minimum for the next few years, like at the big league minimum. And then Jeffers can still be that guy for you. He's cheap, relatively speaking, but can then now DH a little bit and fill that role as well. Maybe you start having him play a little bit more first base, but I think that is by far would be the best player that they could get, and I think would fit like a glove for them. And in terms of the Lopez fit, the one thing that's interesting is if you take out his Braves starts, I think his career numbers would be like way better. The Braves have always crushed like fastball, changeup Marlins guys, and Pablo in his career against the Braves, 14 starts, a 5.40 ERA.
Huh.
So he obviously would never be facing the Braves if he plays for them. Like he really doesn't have any other teams that he has struggled that much against. Like I think the Braves have comfortably been the team that he struggles the most against. So that almost would make me want him more. That the thing that doesn't help is the next, I think, biggest struggle for him is probably the Mets. But the Mets are a different
Different
team, I
team.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the Braves aren't, and so I like that would almost make me want him more at that point.
Braves Nation, Braves Country. Would you make this move? I think you would, but let us
I
know in
think
the
they would.
comment section below. Twins fans, what do we think? Are we willing to trade Pablo Lopez if we can get Drake Baldwin and not just Drake Baldwin? We need Drake Baldwin and another prospect. All right, and let us know, of course, in the YouTube comments below. Question number 5. Based on current rosters, how would you rank all divisions in order of competitiveness? This was asked by ATL Braves 69 me on Twitter or X, whatever. I got my 6 ranked in order. Do you want to go first, or we'll go? Who do you have number 1? I have the National League West.
Me too. Yeah, I want to go like we'll go together at the same time, one by one. When I was putting this together, I was like, oh, I can't wait to see what Pete's
I
got for
know.
this.
I know this is kind of
Uh,
fun. It's because we haven't really done this. Like, for whatever reason, I don't
we've
think
never
we've
talked about
asked
it.
this question, like, who's the best division? And we've kind of talked about it when we just talk about general MLB stuff, but not like actually rank them.
We've never actually
So,
ranked it. It's only usually just what is the best division right now, and then the conversation ends there. We've never been like, yo, dude, like, who do you think's the fourth best division right now?
yeah.
So I'm really curious to see like where you rank them next. So who you got it to?
Was the NL West easy for you? I mean, you got the
That
Dodgers, you got the best
easy.
team in baseball. The Padres, I still think are good, but we'll talk about them in a little bit. The Diamondbacks, I think, are going to be disgusting. I think they're going to
Yes,
be nasty. I think the Giants are going to be pretty good.
I
And then
think
you
I
play
think for
Colorado at home, you might lose sometimes.
yeah, they won't be worse.
Yeah.
They won't be worse. They got Tyro Estrada. They finally announced it.
Yep.
It was for me. It was like anything that the Padres lost, the Diamondbacks then made up for it, and then the Giants have made up for it, and also the Dodgers have somehow gotten better as well. So, to me, it was pretty easy on the NL West side.
NL East, number 2.
That's what I got.
That's what you got too. I mean,
That's what I
I'm just
got.
looking at you got the Mets adding Juan Soto, of course, and then they still went to the NLCS last year. You got the Phillies, who are still one of the best teams in baseball. You got the Atlanta Braves, still one of the best teams in baseball.
And they're going to be better. And they're going
And
to, like, no matter what, the Braves like will be better this year. I like they were so hurt last season. So just by mere just matter of being healthy, they're going to be better.
just playing more baseball with how
Yeah.
talented they are. You just need
Yes.
more games in this sample. And this
Yeah.
sample is going to be the good one. We love the Nationals as one of
Hmm.
these teams where, right, there was a lot of questions like who's your breakout team? Who's a team that is the middle of the road that you think is going to take the next step? We've answered a lot of variations of those questions on the Just Baseball show. Kind of even since the beginning of last year, the Nationals have been on our mind the
Yep.
entire time. So you add the Nationals to the fold there. And to be honest, the Marlins, I think, are going to be kind of fun
They're
in
not
their
going to
own
be
way.
they're not going to be as miserable. The Braxton Garrett news, unfortunately,
Yes.
that stinks. I'm glad we remembered to talk about that quickly because I would have forgot. But that does suck. Tommy John surgery for Braxton Garrett, and I think almost ensures that the Marlins are going to sign. Everyone's been talking about how the Marlins have spent no money, and as they should, it should
Yeah.
be brought up
They
plenty.
should be made fun of.
Yes, this is going to be a way for them to like say, "Hey, look, we spent," and they'll probably sign Patrick Corbin on a 1 year $6 million deal and hope that they can flip him or something. But I'd almost say it's a guarantee that they now go sign an arm because you have Sandy, who you're probably going to trade, but regardless, coming off of TJ, Yuri, who's going to have a delayed return off of TJ. Ryan Weathers was hurt, on and off last year, and then was hurt at the end of the season. Like there's a bunch. Edward Cabrera, I don't need to tell you anything about health wise with him, and like they're going to need another arm there. So I could see them adding on that front, but to the point of like the divisions and getting back to the conversation there, like I don't think they're losing 100 games this year. I think I would take over 62 wins.
Yeah.
I think I would.
It'll be in the mid 60s.
Yeah. So they
Sandy
won't be
comes
worse.
back. Let's say Sandy comes back and shoves, then gets traded maybe, but maybe not. I can see
Young
70.
guys are starting to come up.
Yeah.
Like the
Griff
offense will be
Conine.
better.
Griff Conine hits 50. I could see all
Yeah.
this. Xavier Edwards goes 40-40 somehow.
Watch what's going to happen now because the Marlins have to spend. Like they're going to like get like forced into spending because of the literal threatens of a grievance. They're gonna just do like what the A's did with Rooker, right? Where it's gonna be like, oh, Xavier Edwards, you're playing pretty well. Here's a pre-arb extension of
Here's
like,
here's 7 years, 40 million.
yeah, like legit. And honestly, like that's great. Like I don't
Good
think
deal.
that'll age poorly, but like that's gonna be their spending. If
Yeah.
Yuri's healthy, it'll be like, here's a pre-arb deal for you too. Like, and honestly, if you're gonna force a spend, like I guess that's the way to do it. But they're gonna sign a free agent pitcher.
But if
We'll
you're
just see
if,
how good it is.
if you're a young Marlins player, you're probably happy. Like all I got to do is play pretty well. The Marlins will just hand me free money because they have to.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I was thinking about. I'm like, dude, with some of these pre-arb guys, like, you're not just playing for like an opportunity. You might be playing for a forced pre-arb deal.
For tens of millions of dollars potentially after like a good first half. It's got to be exciting if
Get that
you're
David Bodie money.
the only people excited to Miami Marlins throughout is like seven of these young hitters and a couple of these young pitchers.
Yep.
All right, next one. I got the AL East coming in third.
Yep. I got the AL East as well.
Of course, I mean, the Yankees are still great. The Orioles are still going to be good for how much we make fun of them. They obviously still have a great young core. The Red Sox, I think, are a
Yeah.
sleeping giant here. The Rays, if they could just stay healthy. And, the Blue Jays kind of stink, but they can't be worse either.
I don't think they're gonna. Yeah, I think every
Actually, they
team
could be worse.
they could be, but I think they have a chance to be better as well.
I
And
agree.
the Rays, I think, will definitely be better. As ugly as the offense kind of looks right now, the pitching situation is wild. And then they're going to get some young reinforcements coming up, and that system is outrageous. Like they've reloaded back to like Rays farm system level again. But I think the big shift in this division now has been the Red Sox becoming what they're starting to become now. They're not an 81-81 team anymore. Like,
No, they
we'll
aren't.
see what the record is, but like they're not a 500 team anymore. And again, I think the Rays, the odds of us seeing them finish under 500 back-to-back years, I'm not saying they're going to win 90 games, but under 500 back-to-back years, I'll take the over on them any day of the week.
I think we're going to have four teams in the American League East who have at least 82 wins. So they're at least above 500.
I agree.
And I think another division might have the same. And I'm curious at number 4 if we diverge here. I got the American League Central.
I got the AL Central.
Damn it. I want a little bit of a debate because debating 5 or 6 is dumb. Like, who cares? I
Yeah,
wanted this to be
I
like, oh,
swear
you have, yeah.
it's in the notes right here.
And
It's in the notes.
honestly, the American League Central is right up there with the American League East.
I will
It's
say I
really
changed
not
this
that
one.
different.
I changed this one. Like probably an hour before we recorded. I had them a little, I think I had them, I don't want to spoil it, but I had them like one spot back. And then I thought about it and I was like, dude, I mean, where the Guardians are at,
Yeah.
where the Royals are at, and where the Tigers are at, it's just, it's three teams that you can really see the upward trajectory here. I mean, there's not much more upward of 92 wins from the Guardians, but like, I think you can look at them and say, hey, they ain't going anywhere. And then
High
the upward
80s.
trajectory of the Royals and the Tigers and the Twins, like you just talked about the lineup,
A
like
lot of upside.
there's a lot of upside there. And the White Sox were taking over. I don't know about you. I'm taking over 50 wins this
We
year.
have to. It's going to be the podcast bet, just like we were the A's last year. But I'm
Yeah,
not
I
going
want
to
to
go
see. I
heavy on
want to see
them.
if we can get MGM to offer like a just baseball boost if you take the White Sox over 50.
I'm not going to go heavy. I went heavy on the A's. I'm not going heavy on the White because I don't even love the bet. Like I'm
No,
looking
but
at their team and they're they could be worse than last year. I mean, they're
they might be.
horrible.
They
So
might be.
the A's
But
were at least there were some pieces to be excited about, like Drew Thorpe, and then what?
dude, but the live watch alongs of the White Sox as they
Yeah,
pursue 50 wins will be a movie.
I agree. We
So,
have to do it. We're gonna do it.
but I do think odds are they're going to be better than 41 wins. So odds are they'll be better than the worst team of all time. Um, I and the Twins are the tough one, but I think the Royals and the Tigers, just like where they're at, they're only going to get better. I think this division's better than the ones that are left.
I still think the Twins are becoming one of the more underrated teams in baseball. I think they're going to be good. I think they are going to be good.
We do this every
I
fucking
know.
year, dude.
No, but I don't. I don't. You and Jack do. I don't. So I'm okay in Twins country right now. Like I have been kind of threading the needle a little bit. I think I'm okay. I'm one, and then if I do it this year and they suck again, we're done talking about
We're
them
done.
forever.
I'm done. I'm
I got
done.
I got one more year.
Okay,
Jack's
you're
been
our
done
last
for two
shot.
years. You got like a half take left.
Yeah, I do have like a half take.
You could
left.
like support me, and that's okay.
Yeah,
But you can't come out and say
I'll
it.
decide if I want to endorse.
Okay.
I mean, dude, Correa was actually really good when he was healthy last year. You know, 156 WRC
Imagine voice
plus.
lose and Byron Buxton stay healthy. I mean, we're just
Oh
doing
my
it
gosh,
again.
that
We're
would be
doing it again.
amazing.
We're doing it
That
again.
would be amazing.
We're doing it again.
And the hope is new ownership. Maybe they take over and they say don't trade. You know, some of the guys we'll eat a little bit of a financial loss this year because we know we're going to make money in the grand scheme, which is what every fucking owner should say. By the way,
Yeah.
you even if you don't profit in a singular year, you will be fine in the long run. You will make money in the long run. I promise you. Look at how all of these franchises appreciate. They're always going to be lucrative for you. Stop pretending they're not. But yeah, what's the fifth division for you?
AL West.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
we have the same list, damn
My God.
it. Not very good radio, but we do have the same list. I feel like this might just
Hey,
be the answer to the question.
this might be the undisputed list here.
It could be because we don't talk about our answers pre-record. We want to, come to some disagreements on the show, but we don't have any. So
I
the
swear
American
when
League,
I put this one together, I was like, I have a feeling Peter's gonna have the same thing.
yeah,
I
I
really
thought
did.
you would. I thought you. There was a part of me that would think that you would disrespect the AL Central. I think I've been doing too many episodes of Jack. Where, so I'm glad to be back on with you because you're an AL Central appreciator. So
Oh yeah.
thinking back on it, I'm not very surprised that you haven't been number
Jack just
four.
hates the Centrals.
Yeah, when he's like a central guy, maybe
Yeah.
that's more about him. Maybe that's something
Yeah.
he's got to deal
Yeah.
with. All right, let's get back to the conversation at hand. The American League West. The Astros are still great. I still think the Astros are going to be really good. Like I think they can
I agree.
go to the World Series in the American League side. I still think they're going to be good. I'm so upset at the Mariners, but they have still the best pitching staff, arguably, in Major League Baseball and a good bullpen. So they're going to win their 84, 86 games. Um, the Texas Rangers have as much upside of really any team. And again, a lot of downside too, right? I think, we in the offseason, it's much easier to talk yourself into the upside, but I have to control myself as a bettor not to just go unload on some of these Rangers prices because like they do have a lot of downside here, but the upside is immense. And
What's their win total? No way.
79, no, maybe it's a little bit higher. I could actually check that right
Because I was
now.
gonna say, if I could pick a team, if it wasn't over under win total was they will win more games than last year, it's an interesting conversation.
Yeah, let me
I think the Red
they
Sox would be the layup
Oh,
answer.
I'm
But
so off. The Rangers are at 85 and a half.
oh wow,
Yeah, I'm so off. But that's what I'm saying though. These prices, like the
that's high.
BetMGM knows the upside. Like they
Yeah,
are all aligned here too. So, I mean, this team still has upside to win 90 games,
the
but
A's are
it's like,
winning more than 69
yeah, I think
for sure.
they should. Sacramento, you never know. Could be
Yeah,
weird. But yeah, and then coming in last, National League Central. It's just like I like the Brewers. I do. I like the Cubs. I like the Reds. This is not a bad division by any means,
no,
but when you have two teams that one is the Pirates, who I just if they
they're in
refuse
on
to
Alex Verdugo, bro.
yeah, like if you're just refusing to do anything to surround yourself with Paul Skeens and you're just going to enjoy a few years of him, then he's going to go to free agency and leave you like and that's the team you want to be, you're just going to piss me off. You're going to piss me off. And the Cardinals, I mean, I've yelled enough at them. They don't need it. Cardinals fans listening, they don't need it. So that's kind of where I'm at. But I still don't think it's a bad division. I just think it's the
No,
best.
no, the Cubs could take a big step forward. The Reds could take a big step forward. And I do think the Pirates, just off the pitching, could take a step forward. But Cardinals being in kind of this rebuild mode, presumably, the Cubs, they're better. Like adding Kyle Tucker is great, but like we said, like they need to do more if they really want this to be an all-in year. And yeah, the Reds, they're good, but I mean, I don't think anybody's looking at them as like a full-fledged contender just yet. If they make the Luis Robert trade, they have the potential to be. But yeah, I just think there's not enough upside in this division. Like the Brewers are really good, and I like where they're at, but they won 93 games last year, and it just felt like nobody else was even close to them. So, yeah, it just kind of lacks that punch. It has a chance though. Like if the Cubs can make some moves and the Reds, kind of hit gold a little bit here and stay healthy and get hot, I could see it, but I don't think they've earned the right to be ranked ahead of the AL West at this point, given what the Astros and Mariners can do, and just the mere upside, just the upside of the Rangers, and then the fact that the A's like, we'll see what happens, like you said, but adding a Severino,
Like I
adding a
think the A's,
Springs,
I think the A's are going to be better than both the Cardinals and the Pirates.
I actually agree with that. I think somebody DM me and they're like, how many wins could you see the Athletics like grabbing? And I think they could push towards the upper 70s.
I agree.
Like if things go right, I think there's good vibes there. As annoying it is that they're going to Sacramento and whatever. I think team wise, there's some good vibes there. Like Rooker
Definitely.
got paid and extended. Like the young core that they've got there, they've got more young pieces coming up, some more pitching reinforcement coming up. This team is actually like they don't have these gaping holes and like laughable, names in the roster resource that they've had in the last couple of years.
I agree. And just to recap, National League West, National League East, American League East, AL Central, AL West, NL Central, agreed upon by the both of us, even though we didn't talk about it before. All right, let's get to question number 6. What teams do you think have the best futures and the worst futures? This was asked by DMVP underscore 2019 on Twitter. I got a list of worst futures and I got a list of best futures. What I want to do is I'm going to go through all the teams that I compiled in worst and best. And I want then you to hear them and be like, they're definitely worse than this one because of this, and speak to, all of your deep knowledge into these farm systems. So, worst future, I listed the Cardinals. I listed the Blue Jays. I listed the Padres.
Hmm.
And I listed the Astros. They're teams I missed. So, the reason being, the Padres, I'm starting to get a little bit nervous
Yeah.
because the Padres are not spending and they're only thinking about selling. Jack on the last episode talked about how there's a lawsuit at hand
Hmm.
with Peter Seidler's widower and the brothers and how that's going to work for controlling the Padres' future. So there's turmoil up top. AJ Preller always seems like he might be out this year. We never actually know. And then you look at the roster. So much top end talent still. Machado, Tatis, Merrill, Cease, King, Luis Ariz. Yeah. And then you start getting into the bottom of this roster, and you're like, who is their left fielder this year? Who is playing DH? What's
Yeah.
Cronenworth going to do? And then Darvish at nearly 40, Waldron, Vasquez, some top end talent in the bullpen, but of course now Tanner Scott is gone. Blake Snell's gone. Like, not a great farm system.
No, it's bad.
I'm getting nervous about the Padres' future. But of
They're
those four names, is there one that shot at you more? Because I think it's kind of self explanatory the Blue Jays, the Astros, and the Cardinals. Like the Astros, I think they're just on the last year of this kind of dynasty. And a lot of when you have a dynasty, like it's just hard to withstand it. And sometimes you go through some bad years, and like that's a bad farm system. With the GM, I don't necessarily trust. Cardinals, like they bring in Heim Bloom, they're telling you that
yeah,
they need to improve their future.
yeah.
Am I? I'm Arm. Let's be real. Am I just supposed to expect that Heim Bloom's going to do a great job? Like
I
I know
think
that's his. I know that's his gig, but am I just supposed to expect it?
I think you can count on him helping facilitate a solid farm system,
Agreed.
but
Helping.
it doesn't mean that he's going to, magically build this thing into a long-term contender. The way I look at these situations too, though, is like the twofold, right? Current state of the farm system and controllable talent. And that's why I think your pitch on the Padres and then of course the Blue Jays, I think are the two most fascinating scenarios because you look at the Padres, controllable talent, and when I say controllable, like yeah, technically Xander Bogaerts is under control, but like if you can't move the contract, I don't consider it controllable talent.
But here's my issue. Is like we're talking about the Padres and moving Xander Bogaerts' contract. They like just signed him a few years
No,
ago.
that's what I'm saying. They can't.
Yeah, like that
So
sucks.
Machado is like a decent deal, but again, he's 33. He's going to be 33. Like it's that's not really controllable talent. Controllable talent that they have on this team is Jackson Merrill, Fernando Tatis Jr. because they pre-arbed him, and then like in terms of proven controllable talent,
Robert Suarez.
then and like they're paying him and he's
Yeah,
34.
I know.
Like Michael King, how many more years do they have of Michael King until he hits free agency? I I'm trying like I'm looking it up right now. He's an ARB. Okay, so he is in his final year of arbitration. Like it could get really ugly. You know like when you're playing MLB the show and you like sim a season and you forget to like re-sign guys or like you like sim through the off season and you're like, oh, and then you go to like play the next year and your whole team's gone. Like that's kind of what I could see happening. Like Arias is going to be a free agent after this year. They might even just trade him anyways for very little. The farm system is barren. Of course, they've got two studs at the top, but then it drops. I don't think there's a bigger drop off in Major League Baseball from like prospect number 2 to 3 than what you have in this Padre system, or really 3 onward. Like the top 3 and then down from there, like DeVries, Salas, Cash Mayfield, and then it's like, oh gosh. But I think the Blue Jays, they might even be in a worse spot because your Vladdy is you're either paying him full market value or you're losing him. Bo Bichette, like he's good as gone, and it's kind of the same thing. You're either paying him full market value or you're losing him. Who are the controllable young pieces on the Blue Jays? Not a good farm system either, by the way.
Marshall.
Varsho, I think, who has actually become underrated at this point.
I agree. That's it.
Then Andres Jimenez, you're paying him a
True.
lot of money,
True. Yeah,
but you're
technically
paying
you're
him.
right.
I mean,
Like,
technically, that deal was movable, technically,
yes, technically you're right.
because of
It was
them.
moving because it was that.
I think the Blue Jays are the worst situation.
Mm. Anybody else that came to your mind?
I had the Angels, of course.
Yeah, but like,
You're,
duh. No,
duh.
but you know what? I don't think so. And the only reason I'm saying that is because I think they're doing pretty well in the draft. Like Christian Moore is going to come up to create a core with Neto and Ohapi, and they still have some young, controllable pitchers. Like I would
Yeah,
rather that
yeah,
than Varsho, and you are just going to pay Jimenez. I
yeah. And
like,
then
are
you're
there
hoping
like who has
you're
a
hoping
better
Will
record?
Perfito.
Who has a better record in 5 years, the Angels or the Padres? Like it
Oh
might be
God,
the Angels.
it wouldn't shock me unless it's a master class from Preller if he's still there.
But the
But
real
I,
answer to me might be the Rockies. Like I just don't know how anybody's ever going to want to play there forever. And it's not even totally their fault. I
yeah,
think it's impossible to lure people to Colorado
yeah,
forever. And it's like you're going to have to invent a team through a system.
yeah.
And I that's really hard to do.
Yeah, what I will say is this is the first time I've actually seen a little bit of a semblance of that, at least. But I got the Rockies on there too, just for
Yeah,
transparency. But at least like Dolander, like when's the last time we've seen the Rockies have a Dolander type of prospect?
true. And you hope he's got
They've
to
got
work. He's got to work.
he's got to
He's
work.
got to work.
Yeah, like Brody Brecht, I have no faith in that working out there, but that was a decent get. Like
He's going
I,
to be a Dodger in a year somehow.
I do think the Angels, to your point, like you still have Mike Trout, who like if he can just show anything and be close to what he was, like you're in a decent spot there. And Neto, Hoppy, you're gonna get something for some of these other guys. You signed Kikuchi, Ben Joyce has a chance
Shinwell's
to be the
Shinwell's
next
still there.
Mason Miller.
Yeah.
Um, so like there's some there's and then the vets like Ward, Renhefo, you can get something for those guys. So yeah, I do think they're a little bit better of a situation. But and then the Marlins, like I think the Marlins have the most of these teams, like have the most capital to make things like
Yeah, like the
happen,
White
right? You
Sox
trade
too.
Sandy.
I wouldn't
Yeah,
put these two teams. They're so young. They know they're in rebuilds. Like they're not paying anybody anything. So yeah, I wouldn't put the White Sox and the Marlins like in this conversation.
yeah, it's like who's kind of stuck. And I think the Padres and the Blue Jays are the most stuck, and then just inevitably the Rockies, because you can't get pitchers to go there. So they got to do it themselves. And I don't have much faith in them doing anything themselves. So yeah, I do think the Padres and the Blue Jays are the answer though. And I think the Blue Jays are the worst situation just because when you have Tatis and Jackson Merrill,
Yeah.
and then you have, I think, arguably like a guy that could be the number one prospect in baseball, Leo DeVries, like you can kind of talk yourself into at least like a young core there and figure
Hmm.
some things out. And like, Bogarts and Machado are still there
Still
and they're
good.
like
Yeah.
good players. Um, Whether they're going to be an undesirable paycheck at the end or not. Um, when you look at the Blue Jays, like there's not a lot of guys that I'm like that have even maybe some will. Like I hope Will Perfito like has a big year and you feel great about it. And I love that get for them. But like a lot of these guys you're hoping cement their roles. And then the pitching staff, Gosman's 34. Barrios is your best arm. He's going to be 31. And, you might end up moving him as well. And he's has some money attached to him. Bassett's 36. It's a weird spot to be in. Your top pitching prospect, Ricky Tiedemann, you're just hoping
You
can
can
can stay
play.
on the mound at all.
Yeah.
Like it's they're stuck. They're quite
Yeah.
stuck.
All right, let's talk best features. And it's funny, the team with the best feature has the best present. Dodgers. They are creating a dynasty and a very long standing one. And I think the only way it ends is that when 2048 comes and they got to pay all this deferred money. But if we're talking about the next 5 years, this team has the young core. They have an amazing farm system. They have an ownership group that will spend whatever amount of money possible. They have a GM who's arguably the best in baseball. I mean, I'd take Andrew Friedman against just about anybody. They are becoming a landing spot for the Japanese stars, the Korean stars of the world. They're a perfect team right now. They have the
Yeah,
best present and the best future. And I think
yeah,
then we could talk about second and third, but I think number one, definitely the Dodgers. Like you can make arguments, this team has such a great farm system, this and that. Dodgers have as good of a farm system as anybody.
yeah.
It's
I
They
don't have
are
much to add to that.
truly, and a lot of people are going to hate that answer, but it's a fact. It's just a fact. They are as good of a team now as they will be, I think, in 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. Like we're at a point where it's like, what are they even going to do with top 100 prospects? Like
Yeah.
they can't even fit in a top 100 Dalton Rushing that raked in AAA already. Like where do we put this guy? Alex Freeland raked in the upper minors. No idea where to put this guy. Like
Jose DePaula.
DePaul is could be a star. Um, Zaire Hope looks like he could be a star.
Yeah.
And we have no idea where these guys are even going to fit in. So yeah, that's a no brainer. They're obviously the best situation. Then I think I go Red Sox
Yeah. I'd them at number two
because
as well.
they're flexing their muscles, telling us how they're going to spend money. I'll believe it when I see it. But
Yep.
the fact that they're even doing that before it was, oh, we're not spending shit. Like we're whatever concerns the Fenway Sports Group had about money or whatever, like you kind of knew it. Now it's okay. Money doesn't seem like too much of a thing. You went out and traded for Garrett Crochet. You didn't trade one of your top three prospects, which is crazy, right? Like you don't move the number one prospect in baseball and Roman Anthony, who they still have, obviously. You don't move Christian Campbell, who a lot of people see as the top 10 prospect in baseball. And then you also don't move Marcelo Meyer, who's consensus top 50 prospect in baseball. Like they have young, controllable pieces. They have some star power as well. And their rotation is as strong as it's been. That farm system's still a force. It's one of the better in baseball. Like they're in a fantastic spot.
I couldn't agree more. I think the next team that I would place in here is, I think, arguably the most well-oiled machine that doesn't spend a lot of money is the Milwaukee Brewers.
Yep,
And we
that's what
talked
I
about
have
in the
next to.
first question. You talked about Jesus Mate. You talked about all these new guys that were coming up. I mean, it's incredible. And I just think that, the sign of a great organization is you trade Josh Hader and you get some pieces back, and the fans are upset, and then you slot in Devin Williams. Devin Williams dominates, and then you swap out Devin Williams, and now you get Trevor McGill. And of course, you have Yoho and Mizrowski following him. And then you just have a system that continues to produce great offensive pieces. You seem to at least win or tie every trade you make.
Yep.
I think the Brewers are in as good of a spot, especially when you look at their division too. Because if the Cubs screw up the Kyle Tucker stuff and they never actually reach their full potential, and the Reds never do either, and the Cardinals are in a deep rebuild, and the Pirates are just they're going to win divisions every year for like
Yep.
a while spending no money. I
Yeah.
mean, talk about a better position to be in.
Yeah. No, and also, I mean, I mentioned on Twitter and got a little bit of pushback, but like I genuinely believe it. I think you can make a case that this Brewer system is the best in baseball. And I know people like maybe the proximity of some of the other like Cubs prospects or whatever, but in terms of just talent, I think I would take that Brewers system with just about any in Major League Baseball. So you take that a 93 win team with arguably the best system, or for sure a top five system in Major League Baseball. Yeah, sign me up for that. And like you said, they're a well-oiled machine. Whether Stearns is there or not, like they've got it rolling, and I don't see them going anywhere anytime soon.
Fourth team, I think the Mets have a great future. I'm really excited about the Mets. First of all, you got the pairing of Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor. That's about as good as any pairing in Major League Baseball. But you combine a GM in David Stearns, who I think is up there with anybody, with the money and the wallet that Steve Cohen has. And they also just did kind of a soft rebuild. It's using the word rebuild is stupid because really they just traded away some of their aging guys in order to get a couple of prospects. Like their system is not great, but it's solid. Am I wrong or am I right?
No, it's fine, but I also
Good.
trust them.
Yeah.
Everything we said about the Brewers, Stearns is there to do that with the Mets. And
With
I
the
don't like to
wallet of
give
Steve
GMs or
Cohen.
executives credit before they earn it. I think he's proven that he can do this, and now you give him more money
Yeah.
from a development standpoint and scouting and signing bonuses, everything. Like the Mets are gonna build a sustainable winner there as well.
Yeah, like I think they're going to be competing while building that sustainable model at the same time, and this is going to work for a very long time. But I could just hear, some of my family members who are older, some of the Mets fans, just being like, "Whatever you start hearing sustainable success with the New York Mets, it's like
Yeah.
never
It's like
really
an
happened, but I'm
oxymoron.
going to give them credit. I think it's the first time where we're really going to have this model here, and Mets fans are going to be competing to win the division every year for a very long time. So I had the Mets at 4, and I also had the Tigers at 5. I think what the Tigers have a very good system. I think that their ability to, develop some of these guys. I mean, we saw what Parker Meadows can do. We saw what Cole Keith can do. Of course, you have Riley Green. Of course, you have Tarek Skubal. We look at Jackson Jobe. Like, there's a lot of young talent here. But we also know that the Tigers have been a team to, it didn't really work, but sign a Javier Baez, right? Like they have
They might
shown.
sign Alex Bregman.
Right, they might sign Alex Bregman. So they've shown that they have the pockets to go get that missing piece while also having the development in order to create some of these great young players. So I think the Tigers, and then of course you have AJ Hinch at the helm, who's one of the best
Yep.
managers in baseball. So that's why I had the Tigers at 5.
Yeah. I think that's a good one. I also had the Guardians right there too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, to talk
Orioles.
about another well-oiled machine, but you also look at like the staff all of a sudden. You got Bybee, you got I think Gavin Williams is going to bounce back. You had Luis Ortiz to the fold there. They've got some guys in the upper minors that I think can make an impact sooner rather than later. Getting off of that Jimenez contract, I wonder if they're going to spend a little bit more, maybe next offseason or whatever, or extend some guys. Quan should be extended. I think they should do that tomorrow. But DeLauder on the way up. I love some of their middle infield depth throughout the system. Like clearly they spawn bullpen arms like none other. And the core of Quan Manzardo, Jose Ramirez, and then the other guys coming up. Like I think they're going to be in a good spot for a while.
I agree with you. I thought about the Orioles, but I'm starting to
System's
just
kind of weak now. It's a below average farm system at
I
this
don't
point.
trust Mike Elias. I don't. I
He's on
don't
fraud
trust him.
watch.
Yeah, I don't trust him. And I don't know if it's ownership, right? I was reading the YouTube comments from some of the Orioles fans. They fully think it's Mike Elias' fault that he is getting money and he is not spending.
Which
You're
is
probably right.
outrageous.
I don't like what's happening at the top. And then I keep looking and I'm like, the reason they don't want to trade Basayo is they probably think that in a few years Adley Rutschman is gone. They probably think that Gunnar Henderson is gone after a few years. So if you're not going to extend any of these guys, all right, we'll just see what you can do for now. And you're probably still going to be good for now,
It's
right?
like
I'm
the
not saying you're going
50,
to be
it's like
bad.
the win 53% of your games thing. Like,
Yeah, it's like, all
is that
right,
what they want to do?
have fun with that. So
Yeah.
I'm not putting that in my top 5 futures. I still like their future. I would put them in the top half other than the bottom half, but
Yeah.
still.
And with the Guardians as well, I didn't even mention, hey, they're the number one pick in the draft, and Travis Bazzana, who's going to be up
Yeah.
there like tomorrow as well. So they're in a pretty nice spot.
So we have 2 more questions before the last word, but before that, our last break. All right, question number 7. Do the Giants have a fighting chance at finishing second in the West and grabbing a wild card spot? Is the gap between them and the Padres and the Diamondbacks that big? This was asked by M Monreal 0423 on Twitter. The more I look at these teams, the more I think, just to answer the first part of the question, I think they'll be in the wild card hunt.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think they finish second. I think this is Dodgers, D-backs, Giants, Padres next year. And then I think that the Giants are going to be in the 85 maybe range. I still need more from this rotation. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
they add the Verlander signing, which we can talk about, who I actually think could have a decent year in that ballpark.
Yeah. Which is why we talked about it in the playing GM episode, which is like the
All
reason why
that.
it felt like such a good fit beyond the fact that like you could just imagine Buster Posey picking up the phone and calling a guy that, he went toe to toe with a ton throughout his career. And I'm sure there's a ton of mutual respect there. But you're taking a guy that had a serious home run issue last year, really for the first time. Well, I guess no, he also had it in 2019, but he was able to remain effective because he struck out 300. But really, like we haven't seen him have a ton of home run issues up until he aged and also played his home games in Houston. Like you put him in a ballpark where no one can hit homers, he can start to trust that high vert fastball at the top a little bit more and not nibble the way that we saw him nibbling and I think that will make a huge difference. So no, I'm excited to see what that does for him. And they don't need him to be anything other than a back end of the rotation starter and just a much needed vet and Hall of Fame talent for them in terms of like what he can bring in the intangible side. If he gives them, a low to mid fours and eat some innings, like I think that they'd be more than fine with that. So I love the addition, but I'm with you. Like Logan Webb, grab the top of the rotation, no questions there. Jordan Hicks ran out of gas.
Yep,
Kyle Harrison's been nothing more than a mid fours yet. He's 23. He could take a step forward this year. I hope he
definitely.
does. Robbie Ray, I liked what we saw from him last year, but he made 7 starts. So like, there's a lot of variance here. I think it could go really well potentially, but I'm with you. I want a little bit more. I think they've got some guys in the fold that can help too. And now just adding Verlander doesn't put all the chips in the like Hayden Birdsong has to make a leap basket. So like, I like him as an additional option, but this is still a team that I think is closer to 85 wins. When you look at the D backs, like the D backs are the biggest threat to the Dodgers, without a doubt. I think in the
Absolutely.
entire National League.
Wow. More than the Phillies, more than the Braves, more than the Mets. You think they're
More than
that
the
good?
Mets.
I mean, I'm willing to buy in. I love the D-backs this season. So if
They won
you're,
89 games
I
with
know
a bad first half,
they had the best
and they
offense in
added Corbin
baseball.
Burns.
Best
Like,
offense in baseball in the second half.
and I know they lost Jock and whatever, but like
And
I
Christian
like a
Walker.
lot of, and Christian Walker.
Yeah.
But I really believe that Pavin Smith is going to take a step forward this year. Again, I think the pitching can't be worse, like in terms of like what they got from a lot of their rotation guys. Um, Merrill Kelly's healthy. Erod should be healthy. Zach Gallen missed time with injury. And Zach Gallen doesn't need to be your ace now. He needs to be your two. Corbin Burns is your ace. Um,
Ryan
I
Nelson.
think you could probably make the case that the Phillies have the edge ish, but again, you added Josh Naylor, to offset the offensive loss. Defensively, obviously, you're going to take a hit there, but at first base defense, whatever. Um, I mean, this lineup is pretty ridiculous,
Yeah.
and I think they replaced enough and are in a good spot here. I You got Lawler hopefully healthy, Trey Jameson coming back. They're loaded, dude, on in like every aspect.
I also think that the Brewers and the Cubs are both going to be better than the Giants. And I think that the Braves, Mets, and Phillies, which tells me that the Giants can be good enough to be better than the Padres, but still not make the playoffs. Because if I were in the playoffs, if I were putting my 2025 predictions hat on right now, I would go the Dodgers win the division and the Diamondbacks finish second. And those are the two teams to make the playoffs from the West. Then I would say that the Brewers win the division and the Cubs finish second. And maybe the Reds can take a big leap too. But I think like Reds, Brewers, Cubs, they're all going to be around the same amount of wins, with one of them being in the 90, then the Giants. And then you have two spots already for Braves and Mets or Phillies, whoever wins. So
Yeah,
I think it's really going to be Braves, Phillies, whatever combination, two of those teams from the East, and then one of the teams from the West, and then the division winners. And the Giants just don't
yeah,
make it. But that's
yeah.
not to say the Giants aren't a very good team, right? If the
No,
Giants are in the American League, they might be a division winner. Like this is a good team, but it's not as good as these other teams.
it's the
But I
best
think
Giants
they
team
just
in several
outlasted the
years.
Padres.
Best Giants team in several years. I think there's a lot to be excited about. If they add another impact bat somehow, I could start to buy in a little bit more. But yeah, I think it's a step forward and it's mid 80s. But I look at the Phillies and the D backs, and yeah, I think those are teams that are going to push over 90 wins again, or not again for the D backs. It was 89. I think they're going to push over 90 for sure this year. I just, there's some other bigger forces at hand, I think.
I agree. All right, last question before we get to the last word segment. Who are your favorite mythical baseball players? And that means like a healthy Byron Buxton, a June Schwarber, a FIP kicking in Aaron Nola. This is asked by our guy Peyton Genius on Instagram. Shout out Peyton. He edited this episode. We love Peyton over here. I have
Oh,
one.
yeah.
I mean, I have a couple, but healthy Byron Buxton, just to explain some of these and what he kind of means by the question. When Byron Buxton is healthy, it's one of the most talented players in Major League Baseball. We just don't get to see him. That's why it's kind of mythical. A June Schwarber, when he comes in and he hits 15 home runs every single June. And whenever you turn on a Phillies game in the summer, you're watching Kyle Schwarber leave the park. FIP kicking in Aaron Nola. This is more of a joke between the Just Baseball crew, where we've had arguments about how good Aaron Nola is forever. underlying metrics say he's always better than he is, and it's just that constant kind of argument. I have one that just immediately stuck in my mind when I heard this question. But also, if we're talking about just healthy players, I'd rather have a healthy DeGrom, a healthy
Yeah,
Mike Trout than a healthy Byron Buxton.
for sure. But we've seen that, I guess, for like
Yes.
multiple seasons, whereas like the healthy Buxton's like almost borderline mythical.
It is mythical, absolutely. So that's a better answer to the question. But I have one mythical one that I think, I think might beat yours. And I'm going out on a limb here. Who's your mythical creature that could go toe to toe in Super Smash Bros?
Home Wei-Yin Chen in 2018. This is the craziest phenomenon ever. And it was funny because I was covering the Marlins at the time, and it was so dramatic that it actually came up in a post game presser with Don Mattingly, and one of the reporters were in that like little scrum. It's like, "Are you aware of how dramatic Wei Yin Chen splits are home versus road?" And he started laughing. He's like, "Yeah, we've talked about it." He's like, have you considered just not having him pitch on the road and just having him pitch at home? And then that's where he's like, no, like what we can't do that. Like, what are you talking about? It was a valid question because in 2018, and you know how much of a disaster contract that was for the Marlins, but Wei Yin Chen at home in 2018, 78 innings, a 1.82 ERA. Opponents hit 185, 245, 263 against him. Wei Yin Chen on the road that season, 55 and a thirds innings, a 9.27 ERA. Opponents hit 340, 398, 609. I've never seen a near 8-run differential in home road splits in my entire life. We're not talking about like a 3-start sample both ways. 78 innings and 55 and a third. 1.82 ERA versus a 9.27. Every time this guy threw, it became a running joke. Like Wei Yin Chen at home, it was like dominance, and then on the road, it was batting practice. I've never seen anything like it at
Pedro,
all.
Marti-
80 hits, I think it was, in 55 innings on the road.
Pedro Martinez at home, Patrick Corbin on the road? Or like worse than Corbin at his
It's worse.
worst?
It's
Yeah.
9.27.
Yeah. That's like Chad Cool against the Dodgers in
14
Colorado.
home runs in 55 innings.
It's so strange. That is very
Best thing
mythical.
I've ever seen.
That's a great one. I never would have even thought of that one, so it's a great answer. More people might think of my answer. Bases loaded, Royce Lewis.
Ah, yeah, that's a great one. It
Bases
makes
loaded,
no
Royce
sense.
Lewis. So in 2022, he had one plate appearance with the bases loaded. Grand Slam. 2023, he goes 6 for 11 with 4 grand slams, 20 RBIs. Then last year, down year for him. He only has 6 RBIs in 9 plate appearances, but he's had a couple in the postseason as well. But just in the regular season, Royce Lewis with the bases loaded in his career is 9 for 21, nearly hitting 500 with 5 grand slams and 30 RBIs.
I don't understand.
It's like the
Like,
greatest player ever.
it doesn't make sense though. Like, how do you magically become exponentially better when the bases are loaded every single time? Like, it's a pretty like it's small sample, obviously, but it's like pretty big at this point at the same time.
When you have 5 grand slams, like you've come up 21 times, 5 of those resulted in grand slams. And in those 21 at bats, like he's averaging over an RBI, like per plate appearance with the bases loaded, which is not easy, right? There's plenty of times where, right, you ground into a double play or something.
Yeah.
You don't get credit for the RBI, right? Maybe a sac fly would help, but he doesn't have that many sac flies. A lot of his sac flies are just leaving the park for grand slams. So Royce Lewis, bases loaded. That's my mythical creature.
I like it. I like that. I mean, he is legitimately mythical.
And it's a good segue into our last word, talking about mythical creatures. So sometimes in this last word segment, I'll come to you with baseball history. Arm will come to you with prospects or baseball cards. We'll talk about fantasy baseball. We'll talk about just random things in the last word segment, but not this one. Not the first last word segment of the Just Baseball show. We're going to talk about eels. And I'll tell you where this comes from. So I was at Omakase. Love Omakase, by the way. and we get a eel wrap. So it's grilled eel, some vegetables and rice, and it's brilliant. And the omakase chef mutters something, and he's like, we still don't know how eels reproduce. And I thought to myself, what? What do you mean? And he goes into the story about how eels might be aliens because we really don't know anything about them. So I looked it up, and I quote, humans don't know much about eels because of their complex life cycle, which includes late development of reproductive organs, long migrations to mysterious spawning grounds in the open ocean, and the difficulty of observing their behavior in the wild makes it hard to study their reproduction migration patterns. Even with modern technology, this mystery has puzzled scientists for centuries, with many aspects of eels still not fully understood. We can go to Mars. We can go to the outer realms of this universe. And we don't really know about a creature that has been on this planet for a very long time. This comes from Jason Krumholtz, who has a PhD in oceanography from the University of Rhode Island. Eels travel from rivers to the sea to mate. They make a long migration from their feeding grounds to their breeding grounds, a lot like salmon, but in reverse. Salmon live their lives in the ocean, migrating to rivers to spawn. Eels do the reverse, migrating from to the sea to spawn. So a salmon is easy to reserve and then replicate in captivity. Eels are nearly impossible. And as far as I know, nobody has been able to get captive eels to reproduce or spawn. Scientists do not know for certain what cues the eels use in order to spawn, and that's part of the reason why we can't try to reproduce those conditions in captivity to get them to spawn. Like they don't know how to do it because eels don't even have reproductive organs. It's just a mystery fish.
I
And
had no
I
idea about that.
blew my mind. Blew
Yeah.
my mind.
When you told me
Like
that
what?
is crazy. That is crazy. But the ocean is like just as vast as like outer space in
Oh
terms of
yeah.
just we don't know anything, and that's what I love about it. The ocean's one of my favorite things to dive into, but that is actually nuts.
And there's
The one thing I
conspiracy. I read a crazier conspiracy theory that this is what some people believe that eels came down. Like the DNA from eels came down in a meteor and hit the Bermuda Triangle and has created this like
that's
eel.
the funniest thing I've ever heard.
And I'm like, I kind of believe it. I don't fully
And it
believe it,
tastes
but
great.
I kind of. They do taste good. It's a great
Okay.
omakase.
What I got for you is through age 25 season. Kerry Carpenter, 273, 334, 474 slash line, and 123 WRC plus. Roger Maris, 258, 340, 474, a 120 WRC plus. If you think about it, Kerry Carpenter might just be Roger Maris.
And that's the last word of the Just Baseball show. Hopefully, everybody enjoyed this episode. Best way to support, rate, and review on Spotify, comment, like, subscribe on YouTube, as well as go get yourself some Just Baseball merch. Anybody potentially wagering this weekend, make sure to use code Just Baseball on BetMGM for all those bonus bets, but also the tons of promos that they're doing towards the football. You can use that bonus bet towards any of your MLB futures. For Arm Layton, I'm Peter Apple. Have a great weekend. And let us know in the comment section below. Did you enjoy the last word segment? Remember, our DMs are always open for all those listening on audio. Let us know what you think. I thought
I'll
it
have
was
something locked and loaded for next time. Don't you
perfect.
worry.
And with that, thank you, everybody.